The second tradition I'm about to refer to is Semitic in its origin. Unlike in case with Indo-Aryan tradition, its focus is more on the external universe, macrocosmos. It can't be regarded as contradiction between the two traditions. It is in fact the cruel necessity of any information to encompass only a fragment of the greater picture and establish certain focus. Also to be limited by cultural notions and collective spirit of a certain nation within certain time. But information can provoke us to get rid of limiting convincements and step beyond these cultural notions to see their esoteric meaning. So Kabbalah is one of the tools, and what Kabbalah is, it is both an in-depth explanation of the symbolic language of the scripture and the methodology of practicing the communion with Ein Sof, or the never-ending light. The 10 archetypes of creation, or the 10 fundamental values of the world, are all considered aspects of the Deity and are called Sefirot in Jewish Kabbalistic tradition. The well-known diagram depicting them was first published no earlier than the 13th century AD, but the first notion of Sefirot and their initial description, as well as the exact order of their emanation from the unknowable Godhead, was first put forward in the milestone of Jewish literature, which was Aeonic in theological, political, social, and purely spiritual terms. I mean Sefer Yetzirah, or the Book of Formation that is traditionally ascribed to Abraham himself, the forefather of 3 so-called Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. And the ascription of said book to the patriarch Abraham testifies enough for its importance. And even though the oldest confirmed issue of this book existing these days is dated 10th century AD, most historians agree, based on linguistic research, that the content of this book had been standardized somewhere between 2nd century BC and 2nd century AD, because, Hebrew language later underwent the processes of emancipation from Hellenic influences, which are still evident in the text of Book of Formation, but are practically not present in medieval commentaries to this text. And in that particular period, meaning between 2nd BC and 2nd AD, had such a milestone been required in order to codify the right-hand or orthodox Jewish magical system and establish a uniform method of initiation in the system. This was the system that only Jews of all peoples would benefit from, and it was used for expanding their influence and gaining power, basically. All the rest, the pagans, the Goyim, as they are called in Hebrew, were left outside the margin, and the gods of the Goyim were left outside the margin. For the Goyim, 2 barbarized versions of Judaism were sequentially created, Christianity and Islam. These 2 proxy Judaisms substituted for the genuine beliefs of the peoples which Jews wanted to conquer politically or spiritually. But either a wrong assumption was made that these people will not be interested anymore in practice actual magic, or Jews genuinely believed that the Goyim were subhumans tracing more resemblance to animals than to themselves. Much of the Talmudic literature actually testifies for the latter. But we should be aware of the fact that Book of Formation holds no significance for Christians or the Muslims. It is not even part of the scripture they consider holy. Their religions are not esoteric in any way. They are all about social system and hierarchy preservation. Anything you can think of these 2 proxy Judaistic religions is a religious justification for purely mundane things. At the same time, they unite from belief in the omnipotence of the same deity, which is known under names Yahweh, Jehovah, Elohim, Allah, the deity that the Jews commune with by means of very potent magical system, the Kabbalah. This deity clearly benefits from this seeming victory of monotheism over polytheism, monism over pluralism, and particularity over wholesomeness that was set in its name. But also the gods of the Semites had formerly been venerated, but were eventually left outside the margin. And although the Bible states differently, obviously, it wasn't until this period where the marginal deity of Yahweh, which was practically a tribal deity of one of the Semitic tribes, was elevated to the level of not even the maximum deity, but the deity, the god, while all the rest were doomed to become the devils, the idols to be forever effaced from the earth. Without seeing a wider historical and spiritual context, we could only think that the reason for that were Jews seeking political consolidation and prospective expansion. But the true reason for that is the spiritual constitution of whoever is to be found under the name of Yahweh. He is but the Demiurge, the creator of finite and imperfect world, amidst the endless oceans of perfect chaos. He is the usurper and the imprisoner, the divider of the whole, the separator of earth's waters from heaven's waters. His goal is spiritual, but it is one of a spiritual robot who went out of control. He's very fucking potent, though, and even though the project of the era of Pisces seems to approach its end, we already see that other projects are being created where the influence of Demiurge doesn't even guise itself for religious cults. It guises itself for social cults and social movements and secular traditions and consumerism and whatever else. But even though this whole project seems even more potent than the previous totality of Judeo-Christianity, we do not know how long the cult of Ra in Egypt actually lasted, or how many similar projects were there over the course of world's history. So we can't say if the influence of the Demiurge is growing or diminishing, because we do not see the wider picture. However, the Demiurge always fails to totalize his influence, and eventually he will be defeated with his own weapon. The Demiurge, Yahweh, just like any other entity, encompasses a particular spectrum of spiritual energies. Only he attempts to give up this limited spectrum for the totality, and his handicapped creation for entire universe. Under his influence, we do likewise take the world around us for the only world that exists. Mostly we suffer because of that, and we lose hope and die. But some of us have the eyes to see through the illusion, and it is because the God failed. After all, the building blocks for his despicable creation, the ontological substances, the frequencies and the colors that he uses for his caricature, unite from the whole. So the Book of Formation states there are the 10 ineffable Sefirot, 10 and not 9, 10 and not 11. Understand in wisdom, be wise and understanding. Examine them, explore them, investigate them, and draw knowledge from them. So here we see how the focus of Jewish Kabbalah was established and what was brought outside the margin of righteous religious investigation. But we do not seek righteousness, we seek transcendence. And here is what defines the left-hand path: transcendence for any price. Even if the price is as high as spiritual death as a result of falling apart from righteousness of God, then we are still willing to pay it, because we know the truth that the God of the Kabbalah himself is imperfect, and he is not the entirety of divinity. He is what fell apart from the entirety himself. And that is why, that is the truth that shines through even the most robust of lies.